at it kind of all day.
Yeah, I had back spasms really bad a couple of weeks ago. So it's
I
like,
remember that. You think that's what the problem
oh
is?
yeah, because I do. I'm like this all the time, just typing and up. I'm doing because I'm not standing in the classroom right now. I mean, it'll change when we get in-person classes, but
absolutely, absolutely. I kind of miss doing that.
is Carol off this week? I haven't heard anything from her.
No, I've talked to her a couple times. We've been getting something together for Jeff.
Oh, okay.
I think everybody over there, and you guys too, are trying to play catch up from all the other stuff you guys just went through.
Yeah, because I sent a note to Kelly regarding the 10 o'clock class and I never heard back. And I'm guessing Carol was coordinating with all the rookies.
Me too. Seems like she told me she had done that.
Yeah. Well, the one for us, I mean, I sent her some questions and stuff, but I didn't know Carol was going to do anything else.
We didn't have one.
Now, who's doing the first class? You? Bizarre Stories?
Carol is.
Okay. Maybe she's getting it ready. Because I texted her too. I texted you and I texted her.
You text me this morning?
Yeah, because I didn't know who was in charge. I was trying to get in. I couldn't get in.
Oh, there it is. Oh. I tell you, I've had a rough few days myself. And I'm trying to grow these bangs out, and I don't know that it's going to work. My husband is begging me to grow my hair out. And I do miss being able just to throw it up my ponytail because we go camping about every other weekend. So, and when you have short hair, it's like, because I have really thick hair, and when I wake up in the mornings, it's disaster area. I wish I could pull your hairstyle off, but I can't. I just can't.
Yes, and I'm trying to, this used to be completely just trying to grow it out in the back. Get a little bit of length.
That's what's happening to me because I had the, stacked cut. God bless you.
Thank you.
I'm having to let that grow out. And then I just barely mentioned last year in about April was the last time I had a haircut. And I just mentioned to the hairdresser, I've been thinking I might want a bang. She cut it. So I've been trying to grow this out because that hanging in my face drives me nuts.
Right. Yeah. Well, did I tell you I'm in quarantine?
No.
Oh, it's not bad.
Okay.
It's self-imposed. So I went and got a COVID test yesterday. And then I told my son I will stay in quarantine until I get the results. And then I'm heading to Alabama to hold that grandbaby.
Oh, that grandbaby. Yeah. No, I don't blame you for that. Yep. You don't want to do any of that stuff now.
There's Carol.
Here she comes. Oh. I had my husband and I several years ago, we decided we did not have bathrobes that were appropriate.
And you wanted some?
Well, sometimes you just get cold, and I did not want one of those snuggy things. I didn't want that, right? So we went and bought these big old bulky bathrobes. They're so comfortable. And one night I walked down and he was like, I've put on my smoking jacket. So we make fun, right? So we got these big old bulky smoking jackets. So now it's always like, bring me my smoking jacket. I'm cold. So I've had that thing on all morning and I've got short sleeves on because it's going to be 80 degrees a day or whatever. Yeah. And now I'm cold. So I can't put my smoking jacket back on because it would look funny.
I just swear. Sure. So why are we talking? Are we talking about being cold or hot?
Yeah, we're just talking.
Okay. Yep. Good morning, James.
Good morning. We were talking hair.
Yeah, we were talking hair.
Okay.
And I told her I'm in quarantine.
Oh, dumb bum. What did you ran into somebody, huh?
Nope. I'm a new grandma. So I went and had a test yesterday and I'm home until I get the results and I'm heading to Alabama.
Okay, sure,
Yep.
that works, that works. Well, so you didn't get a rapid test?
No. No, 'cause I'm teaching all day Monday, so I know I'm not going to go Monday anyway. Oh,
Okay. I have had 2 vaccines.
yay.
Yeah. I'm not sure it changes my behavior at all. I was out and about anyway. So, these people that talk about they haven't seen their parents since last March.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you go sit outside with lawn chairs and that whole hadn't seen anybody since March is a bit much. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm the one
No.
that's crazy.
I went in and looked as to when I could get the vaccine.
Yeah.
I was extremely against it. And then all my doctors are like, we don't care. You need to go get the vaccine. And so I went and found out I'm in group 1C.
Right. That's
Supposed to
pretty
start
close.
March or April, right? In
That's
March and
pretty
April.
close.
Yeah, so I have signed up to be notified when they open that group so that I can find one of the few places that's offering them around here.
Well,
I need to go do that. Signed up to be notified.
Yeah, you can go to your health department's website, which will actually take you to the state of Tennessee site, and you can sign up if you're
now
in.
listen, you might check with all your doctors' offices because some doctors' offices are calling patients and saying, hey, we're going to have the vaccine next week or something. My advice is to get on every list possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah, yeah.
You just have to, and then once your group opens up, you get on every, Walmarts are giving the vaccine.
So's Kroger.
Some, and so some pharmacies and some health departments and you just have to, get on several lists. I was on so many lists that the day I actually got the first shot, I was called 3 more times that afternoon about did I want an appointment for the next day? And I'm like, nope, I already started. So
Now, I did hear on the news this morning that Governor Lee is going to lift the restrictions on the nursing homes and elderly care facilities because they're 100% vaccinated. The health workers and the people living there. So,
yeah, I know my grandmother is. I can't wait to go see her. I mean, talking to her through a window with a walkie-talkie.
no, really I think maybe, good morning, everybody, Penny says. I think maybe the isolation and depression are the worst effects of this whole event.
mm-hmm.
And, it's kind of ridiculous.
Is y'all screen jumping?
That is it me, maybe? Maybe I'm jumping.
No.
No. Well, it quit now, but it was like blinking. I don't know.
We're not seeing you blink.
Okay. All right.
We're not seeing.
Oh, there it goes again. I don't know what that is.
Well, just stay with us. We're not. I don't think we're seeing you blink.
It's pretty quick.
Oh. Well, I wish there was a way that we knew where everybody is from,
Yeah, it's nice when they put, their name and then from this place or that place.
Will it fit on there if they went up there in the right-hand corner and if they put their name on there? Maybe
Yeah, Rick Berry just did it.
Let me see where Rick is. I mean, it says Cleveland. Yay. Yeah. So those of you that are listening to us, we're saying, in the top right-hand corner, when you put your cursor in the top right-hand corner, you see 3 dots and it lets you rename yourself. And just for today, let's see about renaming ourselves. All right, I'm going to do it myself. If I rename myself, I'm going to put Carol Memphis. And messed something up. Can I spell today? Oh my goodness. All right. So see, that lets me know So we've got a Memphis and a Cleveland. Catherine. So y'all go up in the right-hand corner and take out your last name if you want to, and tell us where you are. And
you guys, if you don't have your picture in there, try loading your picture in, because it's really great to see a picture, if not a live person, because looking at little black boxes with white writing on them is not fun all day.
So Joe is signing in, and
Good
Joe,
morning.
good morning. What we just talked about, I happen to know that you're from Memphis, but top right-hand corner, you can change your name to add where you're from, so we can kind of see.
I didn't fill out my profile, did I?
No, you don't have to do that. Top right-hand corner of your little black square.
Yep.
You see the 3 blue dots?
No, I'm on an iPhone.
Oh, never mind. Well, those crazy iPhones, I don't guess it lets you do that, but.
Well, they're pretty popular. I can't imagine why.
I know, I'm teasing.
Why? Well, I can't imagine why Zoom hasn't coded for it.
Well, I think it works on the iPhone.
Oh yeah, you can do it. You just got to know where to go at it.
Okay, so see, we got Robin is in Georgia. Yay, we got that going. Okay, so Susan, top right-hand corner, Susan Green, we're talking about putting.
Beautiful lady.
Oh, aren't you sweet? We're talking about putting your where you're from as part of your name. So look, we got Penny's in North Georgia. So see, Susan Green could say Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody could put in there where we're so far. We got Georgia, Cleveland, Memphis, and I don't know if anybody's in here from Arkansas yet.
Yeah, I like that better. I couldn't decide between putting in Green Hills or Brentwood, but I'm going to put in Nashville.
Okay, see, just kind of
That way I have both covered.
yeah, it's just kind of the area, state area,
Right.
Mm-hmm. And Barbara says Chattanooga. She didn't change her name, but that's okay. And Catherine is Mississippi. Catherine, is that North Mississippi or Jackson? Tell me how to add my picture. Susan, tell them how to add their picture. Probably can't do it right now, but.
If you know, you can. If you don't have an iPhone, click on your black box, a little 3 ellipsis will come up, and one of the choices is edit profile picture. So hopefully you will have that option.
If you clicked on your black box, well, I can't do that right now. So if you
Are
have
you on a phone, Jinx? Is that what you do on a phone?
I don't know what you do on a phone.
That's what you said if you did that on your computer. Oh, it's 9 o'clock. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's the magic hour. For those of you just tuning in, if you still, we may still talk about this. Up in the right-hand corner of your black square, there's a little blue box, and you can rename yourself. And we were suggesting that you add where you're from as part of your name. So there's Tarsha, and she's got North Mississippi Tarsha. I love that. So it can be your last name. It could be just connected to your name. There's Randy in Collierville. It just lets us know where everybody is. Since some of y'all are so camera shy. I talked to an agent yesterday, and she had been given the opportunity to enter a contest, but she would have had to make a picture of herself. It was like the person with the best, I don't know, testimonial picture or something with a customer. And she said she was so shy about using her picture that she didn't enter that contest. I'm still going back to the day that Tracy Kirkley was talking to us about doing video, and said everybody was so worried about how they looked in video to their customers. People, when you get ready to meet them to look at a house, they see you, so high. hiding your picture is they are, they are going to see you eventually. So you might as well just jump out there and get used to either showing yourself on camera or, have a picture.
Where was it?
We
Okay.
is what we is.
Yeah, Susan, we are. Yeah, I can go with that one. And all right, so this morning, first hour today, let's talk about what we're going to do all day. We're going to talk about some issues during transactions, and some of them worked out okay in the end, and some of them didn't. But hopefully, talking about them today, we can prevent some future problems. Second hour. I believe from Nashville, we have a community mortgage update. Isn't that so, Jinx? Yes.
I emailed her yesterday. In fact, I'm going to call her right now she never
Yeah.
emailed me back.
Yeah, please do that.
Send her the link.
Yeah, and at 11, we're going to have, we're going to talk about with 3 ladies who got in the business and did really well, really quickly. And we're going to talk about what they did to get there. Some rookies that did really well. But we'll jump right in. Let me share ahead of first this morning about a problem, and it had to do with insurance. And most of the time, most of our transactions are residential, and we have the need for insurance, and the mortgage company they need to verify the insurance. Many times the insurance premium is put into the payment. I think some loans, certainly there might not be an escrow, but the main problem is we need to give insurance. Now, one of the reasons I said, hey, I want to see where everybody's from, different purchase agreements are different. Our states all have different purchase agreements. And I don't think the Arkansas agreement, for instance, and I'm not sure there's anybody in here from Arkansas, and Susan's my Georgia question person, so I'm not sure about Georgia. Tennessee specifically mentions that the insurance is to be insurance contingency or during the financing contingency time frame. The buyer is to determine what his insurance, what am I trying to say? The insurance provider.
The cost, the
premium. Cost of his insurance to make sure. Now, why is that? Why does anybody care about the insurance, and why is it tied to financing? Because we assume that an insurance premium is going to be doable and rational. But who knows? Somebody tell me a reason that an insurance premium might be more than we expect. Anybody want to throw that in there? Why would an insurance premium be high?
Credit worthiness of the buyer.
True. Well, now you would think, and I don't know, Susan Green, Susan Barnett, but you would think that if you've got the credit worthiness to get your loan, that might not affect your insurance. But apparently the insurance mark for a low premium is
different. Plus, they look to see if the people have a history of making claims, and if there's a history of claims on the property itself.
Okay, so there's
flood insurance.
Yeah, there plus flood insurance. All right, so those are 3 great reasons that insurance premiums are not might be high. And
flood
if
zone.
I beg your
Flood
pardon?
zone.
Yes, if it's in a flood zone. And I was told, by the way, I may forget to loop around to this, so I'm going to mention it now. Apparently, the flood zone pot of money, I don't know what else to call it, reserve, the flood zone national reserve, that's a national federal program. Apparently it's really in the hole, really millions of multi-millions of dollars. And so they're anticipating that flood insurance is going to get extremely pricey. So that's something to be aware of. So the Tennessee purchase agreement specifically says that the buyer is to secure their insurance during the financing contingency. So we had a ridiculous situation that the buyer's agent contacted the seller's agent and said that they had applied for insurance, and the insurance company runs what's called a CLUE report. And I don't know what that stands for. Somebody know what the CLUE stands for, Jinx?
I think it's Comprehensive Liability Underwriting Exchange.
Okay, so there is a group of people that keep up with premiums that are filed on properties. And it's that group, that exchange, Comprehensive Liability. And so these people had gone to their insurance company, and they had discovered that there had been 2 water damage claims filed on this particular property. And their quote that they were getting for insurance was high. And so they asked the seller to detail and explain to them what the quotes were about. And now, would there have been another issue that came up in this discussion that anybody can think of at this point? The seller's agent calls and says, buyer's agent calls and says, hey, we've been told there are 2 claims and we want some details. What's the next question that might come up? Anybody?
How many times they've been broken into?
Well, I think if there had been that type of claim, that certainly would have come in as part of the problem. But in this particular case, so the sellers explained to them that they had 2 unrelated water issues and they'd both been repaired. The buyers were concerned. They were questioning, let me say this. They were questioning why that had not been on the property condition disclosure. So now we have a disclosure issue. Several years ago in Tennessee, the property condition disclosure asked a specific question about had there been repairs made, and that was taken off. There's really not a specific question that would have triggered that disclosure. But the buyers were mad that accusing, I'm going to say they were accusatory, that that particular problem had not been on the disclosure, and fussing and carrying on about why wasn't it? Well, there's not a question, and the seller's agent didn't know to ask about that. And so this all came up about the insurance. Now, time moves on, and they get several days into the purchase agreement timeline, and the financing contingency time has gone by. The inspection period has gone by, and about 4 days before closing, they send a message that they are terminating. They are not going to close because their insurance premium, they cannot secure an insurance premium at the price they desire or from the company they desire. Now, they what? They want their earnest money back. Is there any provision in that purchase agreement that gives them their earnest money back at this point in time? Of course, they're screaming about, well, it wasn't disclosed. And of course, if the agent had a hint ahead of time, and maybe we should always ask, I don't know, that's kind of I'm throwing that out there. Maybe how we could have avoided this, but they wanted their earnest money back, and they did not ask timely. Insurance must be done timely. And as I said, in Tennessee, it's specifically on the agreement. I don't know, is there a reference to insurance in Georgia on that agreement, Susan?
As far as, the buyer obtaining insurance,
Timely, let's do timely.
yeah, it is not spelled out in the agreement itself. In the Tennessee agreement, this is something that people ignore all the time.
Isn't that the truth?
And that is section, and it shouldn't be ignored, because in the Tennessee agreement, in section 9, the first sentence of section 9 of that, it's additional buyer due diligence, says if any of these matters below are of a concern to your buyer, you should address it in the special stipulation section, and insurance is mentioned there. So you have, maybe the agent went over it with the buyer, maybe they didn't, who knows? There is no automatic contingency on being able to obtain insurance. But if you're in Tennessee and you discuss that with your buyer, then we also have special stipulations on the RF 707 that you can put into the offer, special stipulations for insurance. And in Georgia, we usually write that in because we're from, well, those of us up here in South Tennessee, Southeast Tennessee, and very North Georgia, we're used to both offers, and we try to write that in. But now Georgia does offer special stipulation language that you can utilize. So,
well, and in Tennessee, even in the Tennessee agreement, and Rick, I know you had your hand up a while ago. I'll circle back. In the Tennessee agreement, it does not give that caveat that the insurance premium or provider has to be acceptable to the buyer. If you want that part of the your stipulation, you have to specifically enter that in,
absolutely.
like copy that language out of the special stipulations, or make sure you reference that the insurance premium and provider must be acceptable, to the buyer. So Rick, you had a question?
So I did. I just read them off last night, and this particular subject is kind of interesting to me. There are some things with the property that maybe I should have put a contingency clause in based on insurability. So now that the offer's been submitted to the seller, to the listing agent anyway, can I, after the fact, do an amendment to that offer, adding that?
I guess
condition?
so. You want to add some stipulations about the insurability of the property?
Yes.
Well, the other way you can protect yourself if you just make sure you hit that insurance requirement timely. And in this particular case, they waited and they let all the contingency timelines pass and then wanted to terminate based on the fact that they couldn't get their insurance premium as they wanted it. So they didn't get a loan denial letter. Now, this was an expensive property and they were not borrowing anywhere close to the high loan to value that we see sometimes. But had this been a high loan to value where the insurance premium might have changed what they can qualify for, then they might have got a loan denial letter, and that would have helped the situation be more clear about the fact whether they were due the earnest money back. But they didn't get a loan denial letter, so they had absolutely no grounds to terminate the contract. They were totally in breach. And so I guess the lesson here that I really want to emphasize is to pay attention to insurance is not any the insurability of the property. It's, in this case, it was the property that made a red flag. There's not always questions on the property condition disclosure for those things to come up. So I don't know, Susan, do you think, remember when we took those questions out of the property condition disclosure, it was because they said by law, we should not ask questions that weren't required by law. Should I, as the listing agent, always ask about repairs they've done in the past, or should I let that fly and let them tell me?
Well, I think it would be dangerous to ask about repairs because you could get into the whole, you're making me talk about and disclose things that I don't have to disclose by law, which is what made us have to do what we did at the Forms Committee in Tennessee anyway. I always think, and I can remember back going to conferences and such, where people like Oliver Franz Kona and some of the other instructors we had, and even the E&O insurance companies that would come and talk on panels, I did not understand why things were not automatically contingent. Well, they're not automatically contingent because not every buyer cares about those things. But being the agent on the ground, we have to at least speak to them about these types of things. And probably not exactly right. Like I said, here on the Georgia-Tennessee border, we will sometimes use language from the Tennessee form into the Georgia form. But you should always check to see if there's a form or a special stipulation that's provided by the state to see if you can cover those kind of things. But that question you're talking about, Carol, on the property condition disclosure, that was one of the main reasons
I agree.
that we started correcting, if you will, or taking it backwards, if you will, to what's in the statute from the Forms Committee, because it's like, do you know if there's something wrong with it right now, or do you not know? You know, yes or no or unknown are the answers for most of the questions on the property condition disclosure. And it says, are you aware of something that's going on right now? It doesn't talk to you about past stuff. And then what if you couldn't remember? What if you've owned the house for 12 years? And I mean, how can you come up with a comprehensive list of all the repairs you've made?
Yeah. So buyer's agents, today I don't know when this is going to change. It's likely to just kind of change overnight, but we'll wake up one day and go, oh, what happened to that seller's market? But right now, buyers are just frantic to get their offer accepted. And so they may do practically anything. And you're concentrating on price and what can I do to get my offer accepted? But when you're representing a buyer, it's your job to think of the things that they are not taking time to think of, and anything that is of concern to them, if they express the slightest concern, or maybe on the buyer's side, it's more important to ask questions, are you concerned about any specific type of inspection other than a general inspection, or, we want to be sure that we protect your ability to get insurance on the property. I think, as I'm just saying, as the buyer's agent, we need to go a little bit deeper with them and make sure. So Rick is concerned today that he wrote an offer last night and maybe he didn't protect his buyer. But I think if you hit in those time frames, if you stick in those time frames, you've got some wiggle room if things don't work out, like they should.
Well, as far as the time frames go, it's just they've secured evidence. It still isn't a contingency of getting out of the deal, if you will, because of they don't want to pay or can't get insurance or something. Now, if they can't get, that's a different scenario.
Right.
But just not wanting to pay for the insurance. Rick, I might, if it was me, do an amendment to the agreement and write that contingency up using that language in the special stipulations document for Tennessee. That would be the RF 707, and just send it over as an amendment and just see if the seller would go ahead and sign it. And we have a comment from Cindy in Hot Springs. She said their forms ask, has there ever been for repairs? Now, can you imagine the seller of a property that maybe has lived in the house for 10 or 12 years, and has there ever been? So you got to sit down and try to remember every repair that you made to a property. That's part of the reason, that Tennessee took that out of there. And in Georgia, the property condition disclosure is not even required by law. They did create a new form this year about latent issues. And so it gets a little crazy when the sellers are trying to do things.
Yeah, really. So I'm actually, I think I'd lean in that direction of Arkansas, asking about all the repairs, because we have so many issues with people saying things weren't disclosed, So talking about, so Susan suggested to Rick that she send the amendment and see if the seller would sign it. Let's talk about another issue that I know cropped up in the last couple of weeks about whether a seller would sign a form or not. Things you send to a seller don't necessarily, there's no forcing a seller to sign things. So this happened in Nashville. Some of you may have heard the story, but they were rocking along and were ready for their inspections, and the seller developed COVID and would not, obviously nobody wanted to go in to do inspections. So the buyers, and they had not presented there's a COVID form, and I think there's different forms in every state and different situations, but in general, there exists some language that can be signed early, let's say, with the original offer, that if there's a delay due to COVID, both parties agree that things will be extended to take care of that. And in this particular case, and I'll have to admit, I don't think everybody's using a COVID form every time, but in this particular case, there was no COVID form. Seller gets COVID just before the inspection period. Nobody can go in and inspect. And the buyers run out of their time to inspect, and they ask the seller for an extension on their inspections. And the seller declines to sign the COVID form and doesn't give them any does not give them any time to inspect. So the agent is quite upset. The buyer's agent, the seller will not sign. We demanding that the seller sign, and they will not sign. There's no force into a seller to sign something after the effect, after the fact. So they would not give the buyer more time. They would not allow them to do inspections. And so on the face value, the Tennessee agreement says if the buyer doesn't do inspections, they accept the property as is. However, on a deeper thought process, the seller actually was in breach for failure to allow the inspections, not for failure to sign a COVID form necessarily, but for failure to allow the inspections. So the seller was in breach, and I'm not sure what happened. Somebody, one of you gals from Nashville may know the end of the story.
I do.
Let's hear it.
Turns out the seller, after a lot of haggling, and I will also be honest, it was a Redfin agent that was the listing agent. So they were kind of hands off. They really weren't cooperative at all. But the seller finally agreed to one day at the very end. I mean, she was probably maybe still contagious, but said, if the home inspector wants to come in, I'm going to allow you to come in at this point in time. And the home inspector actually, he was gloved up, he was masked up, he went in and did his job. So, but yeah, and so that particular agent said, moving forward, and she's the top producer in one of our offices, she says, moving forward, every single offer she writes is going to have the COVID form as part of it, every single one. So if something happens and an inspector gets sick or the seller gets sick, then, it's already going to be in there that they agree to extend a time period.
Well, you know what I find very interesting, and I'll be honest, I did not pay attention to this, but if you go back and read that COVID form itself, it doesn't cover buyers and sellers getting COVID. It covers third-party entities that have to do with inspections and closings and things like that. And I think that's extremely dangerous. We need to make sure that if we're going to use it, that what happens if the buyer gets or the seller gets COVID? Because that form that Tennessee supplies does not cover buyers and sellers. Now, if you want to hire an attorney, you might be able to argue that point. But it specifically talks about, it says that, let's see here. In the above referenced agreement cannot occur as set forth in the agreement because of a business interruption of a third-party service provider or governmental office that is providing services or information necessary to complete the transaction. And then it lists all these things: closing agencies, title underwriters, home inspectors, appraisal, and interruption is directly attributable to the quarantine closure or other circumstances. And it probably would fall under other circumstances. And then the buyer, the seller, is the one that can extend the deadline. But it truly does not mention if if the buyer or the seller has COVID, which I think is just kind of ridiculous. I mean, it should mention buyers and sellers.
Right.
Well, here we are kind of toward the tail end. I'm assuming that we're toward the tail end of the worst of the COVID issues. Am I making a terrible assumption possibly, but maybe the addition of some language and special stipulations that the COVID, any delays due to COVID from buyer or seller, everybody agrees to extend. I mean, I guess you could just amend it that way, could you not?
I think you could. I think if I was going to use that form, that I might take that language and put it in special steps and add buyers and sellers in there instead of using the form and let them agree to it in the offer. That's what I might do. You know.
That's the most recent, now, hey, I think all of us on this call were in the footprint of the 6-day winter we had. And I've decided that, we're completely through with winter in 6 days. What is it, 80 degrees, you say, in Chattanooga today?
Oh, yeah, no, it was 70 something here yesterday.
Yeah. So, but there were delays due to snow and the ice, and the closing attorneys were closed, and I don't know what all. So I'm wondering if we don't normally have any kind of a delay language that protects us during crazy delays like that. And during the time that we were all discussing the COVID inspector couldn't get in for the Nashville agents problem, I kept saying, yeah, that seller's not being very cooperative. And in my mind, I'd be willing to bet $1,000 they have a backup offer and they hope this one failed. So, ice, and I never shall forget, there was a terrible ice storm many years ago in Memphis, and a closing attorney had to go out of business because of when his business stopped, his cash flow stopped, and he had it allowed a cash flow problem in his business to surface that caused the legal community to put him out of business. I mean, it was that severe. So when ice comes and snow comes, business stops sometimes. Maybe we should have a general contingency about in delays, everybody from natural circumstances or acts of God or something, I don't know.
Well, I think I saw Julie on here. It might be a good thing for her to come up with some language for us that we can put in transaction desk to use for these scenarios. Because if you use transaction desk, you can just insert the language right into the special stipulations.
Okay, maybe we make a note about that.
She's probably cursing me right now, just so everybody knows.
She's not. No, she's not. Okay, for those of y'all that don't know, Susan's talking about our corporate attorney who does draw up language and such for us from time to time. Let's talk about earnest money a little bit more. Everybody's now Arkansas, and I'm glad there are a couple of you on there from Arkansas. Let's talk about earnest money, because Arkansas has a real unusual situation. They have an earnest money addendum, so their contract not automatically have a place that says how much is the earnest money and who's going to hold the earnest money. So, and I was told a long time ago, it was because everybody fought over the earnest money and they didn't put up much money anyway. But I feel like today in this competitive market, aren't we seeing in Tennessee particularly a little bit higher earnest money amounts that help people get their offers accepted? But we have these companies that have abandoned having an earnest money account, an escrow account in their own company. And they will often make in their remarks that they want the earnest money held by a title company. Well, we are not in favor of that. So in general, you should just let Crye-Leike hold the earnest money. If the other company does not have an escrow account, just write in that Crye-Leike is going to hold the earnest money. Most of some of the seller's agents may not understand that our objection to a title company holding the money is that it's very specific in the Brokers Act for the Tennessee Annotated Code of the reasons or the ways that the earnest money can be dispersed by a broker. And we all know that when brokers hold the earnest money, that they will must abide by those specific reasons. And one of them is the reasonable interpretation of the purchase agreement. So the purchase agreement spells out in many, many ways exactly how the earnest money is going to be handled. But title companies are not held to that law. And so frequently, title companies, I've heard of bizarre stories that the title company didn't know what they were going to do with it. And they couldn't decide what to do with it. And so they just sat and held it. And so that's not helpful. So we want to be cautious about that. And then let's talk about new construction. You know, throughout most of our areas, inventory is the real problem, finding houses to sell. And where is their inventory? Builders, you know, new construction is inventory. And sometimes they want to hold the earnest money. And also be cautious when you participate with a builder. There's no way around it, but they have their own, in many, many cases, they have their own purchase agreement. And do not be mistaken that that purchase agreement is pretty, I won't, maybe not 100%, but it slants toward the builder's advantage. There's a builder that operates in more than one market of our state. And I've had different people comment around the state. Well, their contract basically says that if they don't get it built, that's too bad. You know, if they don't make the building deadline or the proposed completion date, their contract basically says too bad, so sad. And I'm not sure you can do anything about it, but I think your buyer needs to be aware that if they use this contract and they want to buy this house, they need to really be aware of all of the glitches in the purchase agreement that are geared toward the builder. And I might even send an email to my buyer and say, we're going forward at your desire for this property, but do be aware and confirm to me by replying to this email that you're aware that they're requiring their own contract and the stipulations in the contract are very much in the favor of the builder. I'd like to have something back from the buyer in writing that they acknowledge that this builder's contract is so geared toward the builder. Has anybody had some builder issues that you want to talk about right here? Blair, you want to unmute yourself and tell us your problem? Good job.
Hey, yeah, I was just typing into the chat. That's what I was gonna say. So, just yesterday, I found out that my new construction, the builder has went into the ICU for, as far as we know right now, 3 days. We were supposed to close on March the 10th. But as of right now, we haven't hit 90% to get the appraisal started. So now we're kind of in that unknown area as to kind of up in the air until we can find out when he's going to get out of ICU. He says he can have the house finished by the 10th, but then that doesn't give us the appraisal done.
So you need an extension immediately of your closing date.
Okay.
Does he not have a foreman or something? I mean, it's literally him doing the hammering.
That's what I said kind of to my other team members was, you know, like there's other people. So surely, I mean, there's not just him working on the house. So yeah, he says that his other people should have it done by the 10th, but that still doesn't give us that appraisal time. How long? I think we're thinking 10 to 15 days is what I'm hearing for appraisals now.
At least, yeah, their appraisals are kind of behind, but I would definitely execute an amendment to the agreement to extend the closing date right now. And depending upon how long the buyer's willing to wait, I mean, you may want to go out 30 days just to be safe.
Okay.
I mean, talk to the buyer. And did you use their forms or your state forms for new construction purchase?
State form.
Oh, they used the state form. I'm extreme. What state are you in, Blair? I don't know where you are.
Tennessee.
Oh yeah, I'm super impressed that the builder let you use the new construction forms from Tennessee Realtors.
Well, I actually used just a purchase and sale agreement, not the new construction, because I'm a new agent, and so that kind of threw me there. But I was
Oh yeah, so you definitely then need to, because there is some language in the new construction forms that talks about being, you know, if for lack of a better term, maybe an automatic extension for a certain number of days. But with the regular purchase and sale agreement, there's not. You need to get that extension signed ASAP. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a good idea, at least in the Tennessee market, that if the builder will allow you to use the new construction forms, use the new construction forms. The only time you want to go ahead and use a regular, what we call purchase and sale agreement, the RF401, is when it is what they call substantially complete, and that's like 90% complete. That's when you would want to use that, and some buyers don't even want to use it then. But there's a lot of language in the new construction forms that will protect you and the buyers for things.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, so I've got a couple of other issues that I want to touch on, and then certainly if y'all have questions, if you have a thorny situation that you're aware of, and you want to run, this is kind of a think tank, a workshop, if you will. We may not have the exact answer because so many of these situations, they're new, everything's new, everything's, you know, there are very few transactions that everything works exactly the same as the last one. That's one of the fun things about real estate. I want to talk a little bit about escalation clauses, and that's something we hear talked about a lot when people are writing offers. And in there's actually conversation in one of the markets. There's a broker in the Memphis market that is absolutely adamant and fights about it every day that escalation clauses are illegal. They're not illegal. Now, Arkansas, since we have a couple of folks here in our Arkansas market on today, Arkansas actually put out a statement, the Arkansas Realtors Association put out a statement that they were not wise. And I think Tennessee may have also put out a statement that they're not necessarily, they should be used with caution. And I think the problem is the way the different, the way the language is written is not always as clear as it should be. I know Susan's answer as a listing agent, if you send her an offer with an escalation clause in it up to a certain amount of money, she's just going to counter back with you at that price, right?
Yes. You've already told me what they'll pay for it. Why do we need to go backwards and forwards in counter offers? Because you're telling me they're willing to pay this much money for it, if that's what it takes to get it.
Right, right.
If you use that type of an escalation clause.
Well, the escalation clause, you know, being buyer will pay, makes an offer of $250, but will pay $1,000 more than a verified offer up to $255. You know, so by $1,000 increments, the theory being that if they offer $250 and somebody offer $252, then you get into the reason that this broker is so adamant about the escalation clause being illegal. He contends that sharing the amount of an offer from another buyer is violating the confidentiality rules of agency. But it does not, because, you know, the definition of confidentiality is if a buyer, anybody can reasonably assume that their information is going to remain confidential. Well, if you send by electronic, or you drop it off in somebody's mailbox, or you hand them a handwritten copy, or however you deliver a purchase agreement, once that offer leaves your hands, how can you assume that nobody's ever going to share it or know about it? Or, you know, it's just not confidential. It's not reasonable to assume that the amount of your offer. Now, Crye-Leike has a specific policy that we typically share the fact that we have multiple offers, for instance, but that we don't share specific terms of offers. Now that's written into our buyer agreements, is written into our listing agreements, because that's where we think is the best policy. However, if a seller instructs us to disclose the amount of other offers in the negotiation process, we will follow their lawful instructions. So I just kind of wanted to point out that escalation clauses are tricky and to be careful with them. And certainly if you're going to use one, talk to your broker about it. There are people, and in different, like I said, Arkansas in general has said, whoops, we don't want y'all to use those. So, there's that. And the other thing I wanted to talk about before we lose time and we answer some other questions, wire fraud. You know, we have a wire fraud form that every buyer and seller must sign, and wire fraud is alive and well. Unfortunately, I think there are fairly recent issues of wire fraud, and I hope everybody's familiar with the reason that we have you as the agent stay out of the middle of the discussion between accounting. Let's say, so right now, apparently a whole lot of people are wiring in earnest money. That's very common. And the buyers who want to wire money must call accounting, our main accounting office, and they are given some information that's known only to them and instructions on wiring the funds in. It's not something we can pass on to a buyer and tell them, oh, this is the wiring instructions for earnest money. Mm-hmm. Same thing about wiring instructions for wiring in the purchase funds to a title company, or wiring the seller's proceeds out from the title company. If you haven't really read through the wire fraud form, you should do that, because it cautions and explains how they are to protect themselves by being careful about the instructions they receive, and that they don't follow along any instructions that come along afterward. That's where they get caught. Their instructions. So apparently in the air, you know, we all don't know how all these things get transmitted from person to person. And it's kind of a mystery to some of us about the internet in general. But apparently there are bots, I think is actually what they're called, that watch for the word closing and funds. And when emails fly around about funds and money being transferred, their electronic ears pick up and they follow those messages, and they then intervene and try to send an alternate message if the messages aren't encrypted. You know, our title companies do these things with encrypted messages. So let's just be really, really careful about the wire fraud and be real aware that it's not a dead issue, you know, at all.
Julie has put in the chat that Atlanta is the #1 spot in the nation for wire fraud issues. So if you are a Georgia, Atlanta area agent, you really need to use that wire fraud form, and you need to stay out of those emails, sending closing directions and wiring instructions and all that stuff.
Oh, and I forgot, we're getting ready to arrange for some a training with the FBI on wire fraud. That's one of the things we're going to get arranged shortly. So I think that would be a fun class. Rather than us talk about wire fraud, let's hear from the FBI. You know, we'll put on.
Right now, there's an active case, and Carol, you may remember us being in the basement of some hotel in Nashville doing a forms committee meeting in 2018 when the hotline attorney brought that wire fraud case up. It's in Robertson County in Tennessee, and there is the buyers are suing their buyer agents. So it's not been settled yet. It's been hanging over their head for 3 years. And I did ask a friend of mine that is an expert witness on that case if if it's settled, what's going on. And he said it's not settled yet. There has been some talk of settling out of court, which will, you know, happens a lot of times. But
And why do they think that? Why are they suing the agent? What did they do that caused them?
they said that I've got a copy of the complaint, but they said in the complaint that the buyer's agents were negligent in informing them how prevalent wire fraud was. Now, you know, we have wire fraud statements, and as Crye-Leike agents, we've used that form. We actually had the form before that. And just so you all know, Tennessee Realtors came to Crye-Leike and said, hey, can we see your form? And Crye-Leike let them look at the form, and that's how they created their wire fraud form. So, but they say the agents are negligent. Their attorneys went back and quoted and gave links to videos from the National Association of Realtors under their Window to the Law video series that they have, warning agents about wire fraud and to stay out of the middle. So their attorneys did a whole lot of homework. They had dates the videos came out, and the fact that the agents did not, they were negligent in making sure they understood about wire fraud. Yeah.
Okay.
They lost $300,000. They got back a portion of it, but they haven't been made whole. And then they are just suing the agents for, you know, negligence, failure to exercise reasonable skill and care. That's part of the agency law. I'd have to reread the complaint.
Well, I understand. And so the fact that we have customers, every buyer, every seller sign the wire fraud, you know, surely I saw in one of your notes in the chat, Susan, that you were talking about, remember we were talking about being cautious about making sure the buyer understood all of their options and not rush to make an offer. And you made the comment, yes, a buyer should read through the entire purchase agreement. I'm hoping we're not, and that brings, you know what that brings to my thought is about using electronic signatures. I feel like if some people are in a hurry because, gee, I'm afraid this house is going to get away from me, I've got to make this offer right this second. Well, there's all kinds of things they need to sign to make offers in addition to the purchase agreement. But even the purchase agreement, I don't think it's responsible to assume that someone reads through a document adequately, effectively.
Yeah, when they're in a hurry.
If they're being sent only by an electronic signature first, if that's the only way that they're getting the document is, okay, I've prepared all the documents, here, click here and sign. Mm-hmm. I feel like you could really be charged with failure and negligence in that way. So I always teach and encourage that you send let's say it's at midnight, we're not together, or they're in California, whatever the situation is, you really can't sit down with them and go over the forms. I feel like they should be emailed out separately, emailed not requiring a signature, schedule a Zoom call or a telephone call at the very least, where you literally go over the forms with them and point out that one of the things you're having them sign is a wire fraud form. And the reason for it is that it's rampant and a real thing. And there are some possibilities that if you have some extra concerns about the property, we could write them in as special stipulations. So I feel like if I needed to testify that I had explained to the buyer all of the options that I needed to have gone over them with them. And then once they confirm with me, maybe it's a return email. Yes, I've reviewed the properties. I've reviewed the paperwork. I've reviewed all the clauses and the things you've mentioned, and I'm ready to sign. Then we send them to them by electronic signature. So
and Carol, with Transaction Desk, that tool that we have, there's even more that you can do. If you make them a participant to the transaction, you can get on the phone with them. They can go into the transaction dashboard on their end, and you can get on the phone with them and go over it and fill it out with them and ask them questions.
I love that. Yeah.
They can see it. So you just have to learn the tips and tricks of Transaction Desk, but you can even do that way. And the code of ethics also, for those of us that are realtors, the code of ethics says we'll make sure they understand it if we're working using any type of technological means also. So if you're not scared of the law, maybe you're more scared of the code. I don't know.
Okay, so somebody got a question, something you want to bring up about a problem you're having, maybe a problem that you're in the middle of a transaction, you're trying to get it done. Questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
My name is Reba and I'm in Huntsville, Alabama.
Okay.
And I just want to make the statement in reference to builders in general. And whenever they sell one of their homes, I mean, they are the seller. So that gives them some leeway, but there are a lot of things that they don't have control over, such as weather inspections and fires that wipe out our lumber, prices of lumber, labor, and now COVID. So when you mix all those in and it becomes insane, and instead of taking wouldn't it be great to build a house in 5 months? It'd be awesome. But unfortunately, across the board here in Huntsville, it's taken 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 months to build. I know of 2 builders personally, and they are, I forgot the number, 89, I think, 89 homes sitting with no windows because they can't get windows. Now, manufacturers of windows are only operating half capacity because of the COVID thing and all of that and all. So all the way down the line, whether it's manufacturing chipboard, which used to be $7 to $9 a sheet, is now $24 to $28 a sheet. And that's caused the lumber is going up due to the fires and of course the processing factories and what have you. So COVID has really done a tremendous slaughter of our economy and how we go about building or how we do business in general. So I'll just keep it general. So when I work with a buyer and they say, oh, well, how long does it take you to build a home? And I tell them, I'll say, well, these are the 3 things that govern that time frame. If you are on a specific deadline, you might want to consider a spec home, which is a home that's already in process. And well, let's work on that. Half the time, or even more than half the time, you cannot put, okay, even a spec home, we're going to be completed on this spec home by March the 15th. I don't know of a builder out there that will lock in to March 15th with what we're having to put up with. Not only do we have a demand here in Huntsville because we have jobs, thank goodness. Well, thank God for that. We do have the jobs here. But the 3 things I was talking about, weather inspections and material, and then when you add labor into that, there's some things you just do not have control over. So you have to really talk to those buyers, and I tell them it's like, it's like a baby. You know it's coming. You just technically don't know exactly what day it's coming. You can't get a mortgage locked in for 45 to 60 days out anyway. Okay, well, we know we can get that closed. And then, like, we're getting ready to have a week of rain. Well, there goes your dirt slabs. There goes your... And then if it freezes, that freezes the pad. Then you've got to repack it, bring in more dirt. I mean, there's a lot too. And I know I sound like I'm the builder. I am taking up for the builder because that's what I do.
Your crystal point, Reba, and I'm going to we've got one other question with a hand up, and I'm going to do that real quickly.
I'm
and
sorry,
then-
I didn't mean to.
No,
take up
that's
so much
fine.
time.
We've just got to, we're going to close up this hour, but
Sure.
your point, well taken, is that buyers need to understand when they're dealing with builders about all the issues. And we're remiss if we don't, point that out, and certainly talk to the agent that's familiar with the builder's issues, and don't promise somebody in house in 90 days, because that's not going to happen.
And we're
Dina,
having classes on that next month, right, Carol? Or in
Yeah.
April? In April, we're having new construction classes. So Reba, I'm writing your name down. We may be calling you.
yeah, it will, yeah.
Well,
Dina,
let me say something about new construction. I absolutely love it. I was with a builder, and because I couldn't get a subdivision, and I was the last one hired, so obviously I was the first one out. But we have 4 major builders here in Huntsville, Alabama, this county of Madison, that are not writing contracts for new construction. They are on hold until April 1. And we have 2 builders, and there is a list. You can go and get on the list. And one of the agents told me that there was 162 or 100, over 150 on a waiting list. So even though they've put everything on hold, can you imagine? It's like a dam. I've dammed up this to give me time to get windows and to catch up. What's going to happen when that comes down? And then, it's just going to flood. I can't wait.
well, I certainly see that. Wait a minute, Dina, you had a question up there. You still there with us? Can you throw your question out in just a minute?
Yes, this question is back to the transaction desk, like if you're going over the contracts with a client.
Yes.
So I think Susan mentioned that it's a way that they can actually enter into transaction desk and view it too. Did I get that
I
right?
made myself a note that we will specifically teach that as a class.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I wrote that down. That's the next transaction desk class.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
very good.
that's awesome. Thanks.
All right, good. It is 9:58, and we're going to take a couple minute break. Don't hang up, but leave your computers if you'd like. And we're going to have at